is 7 o'clock. Welcome to the August 16th Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. I will now call the meeting to order. Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Comments of public interest. This portion of the meeting is to allow up to 3 minutes per speaker with 30 total minutes on items of interest or concern and not on items that are on the current agenda. The Planning and Zoning Commission may not discuss these items but may respond with factual or policy information. The Planning and Zoning Commission may choose to place the item on a future agenda.
Do we have any speaker cards for this item?
No, we do not.
All right.
Consent agenda. The consent agenda will be acted upon in one motion and contains items which are routine and typically non-controversial. Items may be removed from this agenda for individual discussion by commissioners, staff, or any citizen. The presiding officer will establish time limits based upon the number of speaker requests.
Does anyone have anything they'd wish to remove from the consent agenda?
Move approval of consent agenda.
Second.
A motion to approve the consent agenda by Commissioner Downs with a second by Commissioner Gibbons. Please cast your vote. And the consent agenda carries with a vote of 8-0. Our first item, please.
Agenda item number 1, public hearing, zoning case 2021-020. Request to amend Article 8 definitions, Article 9 residential districts, Article 13 lot and building standards, and related sections of the zoning ordinance pertaining to backyard chickens. Applicant is City of Plano.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Meredith Herbst, planner with the Planning Department. This is a request to amend various sections of the zoning ordinance pertaining to the keeping of backyard hens. To provide some background, City Council has discussed backyard hens over the past year and has directed staff to propose ordinance amendments that would permit them in residential areas. The Animal Shelter Advisory Committee and multiple city departments, including the Planning Department, have collaborated to draft amendments to the Code of Ordinances for this purpose. During this process, planning has identified some areas in the zoning ordinance that would conflict with the potential amendments to the code. So we're bringing forward this item to resolve these conflicts. Although it's not within the purview of the Planning and Zoning Commission to take action on the proposed code amendments, a draft of these was included in your packets and is shown here, summarized here, to help the Commission evaluate the proposed amendments to the zoning ordinance for consistency with the code. The proposed zoning ordinance amendments will ensure that the keeping of backyard hens are not going to constitute a kennel use, that backyard hen permit holders will be able to sell hen byproducts in accordance with the Code of Ordinances, and that properties zoned estate development will not be prohibited from keeping backyard hens. So although the interim comprehensive plan does not provide a directive to permit backyard hens, it does support amendments to the zoning ordinance that align with the changing needs and desires of the community. Thus, the proposed amendments are in conformance with the interim comprehensive plan, as well as the other supporting sections noted in your packets. So there are 3 areas in the zoning ordinance in which planning identified conflicts with the proposed code amendments. First, because of the way kennel uses are defined in our zoning ordinance, the uses could apply to a residence that has more than 6 backyard hens if the hens are being sold, or like their byproducts are being sold or offered for sale. So this would severely limit where the backyard hens can be kept, so the amended definitions for these uses are proposed so that they do not apply to these situations. Second, the accessory building regulations. The zoning ordinance currently prohibits accessory buildings, which would include chicken coops, in residential districts from being used for commercial purposes. This regulation would conflict with the allowances made in the Code of Ordinances, so the proposed zoning ordinance amendments add an exemption for the coops that are used for this purpose. Third, the estate development district currently prohibits fowl and and contains other animal regulations that that other zoning districts do not have. So to permit backyard hens in this district, the same as they would be in other districts, the proposed amendments make an exemption for backyard hens kept in accordance with the Code of Ordinances. Staff recommends that the Commission approve this item subject to City Council approval of the associated Code of Ordinance amendments for the keeping of backyard hens and per the zoning ordinance amendments as noted in the staff report, which includes those amendments to the kennel uses, accessory building regulations, and estate development district. Additionally, we did receive one response to this zoning case. The response was received via email and was also included in your packets. This concludes staff's presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions. And we also have the Animal Services Director, Jamie Cantrell, is here and able to answer your questions.
Thank you, Meredith. Before we entertain questions, Michelle has pointed out, and I think it's worth recommending, what we're here to discuss and review tonight is the zoning ordinance changes, not the Code of Ordinances and the specifics about hens and how many and eggs and all that such. That's a different discussion. What's before us tonight is the zoning change to allow the ordinance. So with that said, does anybody have any questions for Meredith?
Well, I'll ask a similar question to what I asked in the preliminary open meeting, which is it says hens, not chickens, but the presentation seemed to intermix those. So should, as I understand, there are other types of fowl that are also referred to as hens. Should this be made more specific to make sure that it's only chickens and not some other kinds of animals?
Are you like looking at the language in the zoning ordinance? Yeah.
I'm Jamie Cantrell. I'm the Animal Services Director. Mr. Gibbons, to answer that question, the Code of Ordinance changes are very specific on being hen as far as chickens. Guineas, ducks, peafowl would not be allowed and are still by ordinance considered livestock and are therefore restricted to properties that are allowed to have livestock, such as agricultural zone districts.
Thank you. And also, I understand that this is specifically excluding roosters, so we don't have to worry about our mornings anymore.
Well, that is correct. That's only female chickens would be allowed. Now, unfortunately, you really can't tell the difference between females and males when they're younger. So a lot of times when people buy them, what they think are hens turn out to be roosters later on. So that creates a whole other issue for us. We'll deal with that as we come to it. But you know,
So how do you plan to enforce that?
Well, once we know that they're roosters, they would have to remove that animal from the city. Yeah.
Yeah, and I just want to add that in our zoning ordinance amendments, we were specific in saying hens, just to be clear that it's aligning with their regulations.
Commissioner Downs?
Yeah, just for the purposes of us and people watching, perhaps, maybe a little gray area here that we're not clear. So we're changing our zoning ordinance to allow for our Code of Ordinances to have hens in the city. What we do tonight will allow us then to move to the next step, which will actually be to discuss the Code of Ordinances, or that's going to take place just at council level?
That will just take place at the city council level. We've provided that information so there's context and so you can see how the ordinances align, but the discussion specifically of the Code of Ordinances is limited to city council.
So once we approve this, then anyone who has issues with hens or really desires them will need to go to council to bring up their concerns about numbers, noise, conforming, enforcement, etc.
Unless they're chicken.
Unless they're chicken. Can we adjourn the meeting now? Thank you.
Commissioner Carey, did you have something?
I did have a question, and so is there a mechanism in here for neighbors to oppose someone else getting chickens, their next door neighbor, is that in here? Is that mechanism in this
It
ordinance?
wouldn't be in the zoning ordinance, but it would be in the
Yeah,
chicken
it-
ordinance.
That was actually something that was discussed, but was decided against, specifically because what was felt was that gives, you might have one person who is not reasonable in a neighborhood, that would give them power and authority over their neighbors, who otherwise would be able to comply in every way with our ordinances, but couldn't keep hens if they so chose, simply because they happen to be next to the one, neighbor in the area that is not necessarily friendly with everyone.
Okay, great. And just one other quick question. The word immediately is in this ordinance, and I'm curious, it's in 5 here, and it says something, manure and soil bedding material must be immediately disposed of? Well, how are we looking at immediately?
For us, that's more about, it makes it easier for us to enforce the accumulation when they fail to remove it in a timely manner. We're not expecting people to stand outside and watch the chickens, for 8 hours a day, and as soon as, one does what they do. The other thing about chickens is they tend to use the bathroom a lot while they're sleeping at night. So they have to keep their coops clean, because that's where the birds will stay, is in the coops at night. And if they fail to clean that up, that makes it very simple for us to be able to go in and say, this is more than a day's accumulation of waste product here. So you're in violation, and it's creating a nuisance for the neighborhood. So it makes it easier for us to enforce, to prevent nuisances.
Thank you very much.
Commissioner Horn?
Yes, Meredith, as I'm looking through here and I see amendment Part A, amendment, which is 9.300.3, we talk about minimum lot size of 43,560 square feet. So only those that have that lot size are allowed to have hens, is that correct?
Any lot size that's allowed in the ED district would be allowed to have hens per the code of ordinances. So we're just saying that your 85,000 limit does not prohibit you from keeping hens.
Well, what I'm seeing here is a minimum lot area, again, of 43,560 square feet. If they meet that minimum requirement, they can raise hens. Correct.
Yes, because it would be a legal lot.
Okay.
in ED. And
So any lot throughout the city is less than that would not be able to raise hens?
So this portion is just for the estate development
Just for
district.
estate development? Okay, thank you. Is there any minimum lot requirement to raise hens?
Not in the zoning ordinance.
Mr. Horn, I can tell you there's not a minimum lot requirement for the keeping of hens. However, there are restrictions in place as far as setbacks. The way we wrote the ordinance is that all coops must meet the accessory building rules, even if they are not 120 square feet. So while they would not have to be permitted through building inspections, they do have to be permitted through our department. So even if they had, say, an 80 square foot chicken coop and exercise yard total, they would still have to meet all of the requirements as far as placement in the yard, setbacks. Additionally, in our ordinances already, we have what's called an animal housing enclosure, which is for dog runs, chicken coops, pigeon houses, anything that is designed for animals to live in outside of the house. And if an animal housing enclosure contains 4 or fewer animals, it must be at least 20 feet away from the closest building that is not owned by the owner of the animals. If they have 5 or more, they have to be 50 feet away. So we feel like the setbacks that we have in place through the accessory buildings and through the animal housing enclosures will ensure that those who have very tiny lots with small backyards and the 0 lot line type things are not going to be able to meet that criteria because they would be so close to their neighbors.
But a typical suburban home would be able to have hens in their backyards.
The intent of what we were instructed to do was, yes, sir, that an average single-family home with an average-sized backyard would be able to comply and have chickens if they so chose.
Any other questions for staff on the zoning ordinance?
I had a question, and maybe she can answer, I don't know. Does this preclude an HOA from preventing someone from having it? I'm not sure what the rules are, where that falls, because HOAs have certain authority, but I didn't know if this falls within that.
This ordinance, neither the zoning code or the code of ordinances would address what HOAs can do.
Okay.
In the proposed ordinances, it specifically states that it does not preclude an HOA or take precedence over whatever rules they may put in place. So if an HOA wants to say it's not allowed, they have the right to do so.
I figured as much, but again, for clarification for anyone watching.
Any additional questions for staff? Thank you guys very much. We appreciate it. All right, I will open the public hearing. I believe we've heard from the applicant being the city. Do we have any speaker cards on the item?
We do. We have one. Mbir Shafin is on Zoom.
Hello, I am Ember Chafin, actually, and I am a member of the Plano Hens group on Facebook, and we've been working with City Council as well as Jamie. I don't always have the correct month. COVID has kind of gotten me all kind of confused, but I just wanted to say that we are here to answer questions, but also that we are in support of the zoning ordinance recommendations.
Thank you. Any further speaker cards?
No, they're not.
All right, I will close the public hearing and confine comments and discussion to the commission and staff.
Move approval of item 1.
After a motion to approve by Commissioner Downs with a second by Commissioner Carey for agenda item number 1, please cast your vote. And agenda item number 1 carries with a vote of 8-0. Agenda item number 2, please.
Agenda item number 2 is a public hearing replat, High Point North Athletic Complex, Block A, Lot 1R, public service yard and park playground on one lot on 23.8 acres located on the east side of Alma Drive, 1,433 feet north of Spring Creek Parkway. Zone Plan Development 329 Community Center. Applicant is City of Plano.
Good evening, Commission. I'm Daniel Brassel, planner in the Planner Department. This item is recommended for approval as submitted.
Thank you. Any questions for staff on agenda item number 2? No? Thank you very much. I will therefore open the public hearing. Do we have any speaker cards on the item?
No, we do not.
All right, I will close the public hearing and confine comments and discussion to the commission and staff.
Make a motion, we approve agenda item number 2 as recommended.
Second. We have a motion to approve agenda item number 2 by Commissioner Horn with a second by Commissioner Gibbons. Please cast your vote. And agenda item number 2 carries with a vote of 8-0. Agenda item number 3, please.
Non-public hearing items. The presiding officer will permit public comments for items on the agenda not posted for a public hearing. The presiding officer will establish time limits based upon the number of speaker requests, length of the agenda, and to ensure meeting efficiency, and may include a cumulative time limit. Speakers will be called in the order cards are received until the cumulative time is exhausted. Agenda item number 3, extension of approval request for a preliminary plat. 10 Core Center, Block A, Lot 4, hotel on one lot on 2.5 acres located on the south side of Tennyson Parkway, 1,575 feet west of Communications Parkway. Zone Commercial Employment. Applicant is G.J. Shin Limited.
The purpose of this preliminary plat is to propose easements necessary for the hotel development. The Planning and Zoning Commission approved the preliminary plat for 10 Corp Center. This plan will expire on September 16th, 2021. Staff has reviewed the plan and no substantial changes to the previously approved plan were requested by city staff. We recommend the extension of this plat.
Are we asking for an extension or for approval?
an extension of it, so it's to approve an extension.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions for staff? On the request for an extension, it's worded a little differently than what's it?
I have a question real quick, because in our package, we did not receive the letter that we received that, but for the public and those interested, what was the reason for the delay, why they're asking for the extension?
I'm not sure. I will defer to,
It was the.
There was a letter sent by email today that,
was.
many other things, the pandemic has been a problem with the construction process.
Correct.
That's the basis. Let me wait till we get to the applicant, and then we'll love to hear from you. Let further questions for staff? No? All right, thank you very much. This is not a public hearing, so I don't get to bang my gavel. Now, please let us know what you have.
Good evening. Michael Carlisle with Kimley Horn, 260 East Davis Street, McKinney, Texas. Yes, as I believe you were mentioning, the construction was delayed due to COVID. And so this extension of the preliminary plat is to just allow that additional amount of time.
Any questions for the applicant? No? Thank you very much.
Thank
Do
you.
we have any additional speaker cards on the item?
No, we do not.
Then I will close the non-public hearing and confine comments and discussion to the commission and staff.
I recommend that we approve the extension as requested, subject to alterations or additions from the engineering department.
Second.
Second.
Motion to approve the agenda item number 3, subject to the approval of the engineering department by Commissioner Downs and a second, or by Commissioner Gibbons and a second by Commissioner Downs. Please cast your vote. Agenda item number 3 carries with a vote of 8-0. Agenda item number 4, please.
Agenda item number 4 is a preliminary site plan, Willow Bend Polo Estates, Phase B, Block B, lots 1 through 19. 19 patio home lots on 3.1 acres located at the southwest corner of Turtle Creek Drive and Old Westbury Lane. Zone Plan Development 423 patio home with specific use permit number 58 for country club and private club. Applicant is Shattuck Acquisitions, LLC.
Good evening, Commission. My name is Craig Fisher, Senior Planner with the Planning Department. The purpose for this preliminary site plan is to show the proposed 19 patio home development. The zoning ordinance requires 2 off-street parking spaces per dwelling unit, plus one half parking space per dwelling unit for visitor parking. The visitor parking requirements may be eliminated or reduced at the time of site plan or subdivision plat approval with a finding that there is adequate on-street parking for visitors. Each lot will include 2 off-street parking spaces accessible from the proposed alley. This rear entry parking pad will meet the resident parking requirement. A total of 10 visitor parking spaces are required. As outlined in the applicant's letter, they are requesting to provide that parking on the street. The applicant provided this exhibit showing over 1,000 linear feet of frontage along Shattuck Boulevard and Old Westbury Lane. The zoning ordinance requires 22 linear feet per parking space, requiring a total of 220 feet to meet the required 10 visitor parking spaces. So there's more than enough room to provide the required visitor parking on the street. Staff is in support of this request and recommends approval as submitted, subject to the Planning and Zoning Commission, finding that there's adequate on-street parking for visitors. Available to answer questions. The applicant is also here.
Thank you, Craig. Any questions for staff? Commissioner Downs?
Just confirming the streets format on these streets allow for on-street parking. There's plenty of room on both sides of the street with clearance for a vehicle to get between.
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you.
Any further questions for staff? No? Thank you, Craig. Does the applicant wish to address the commission?
He does not.
Okay. Do we have any speaker cards on the item?
No, we do not.
Well, then I will close the non-public hearing and confine comments to the commission and staff.
I'd move for approval.
Second. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Can we
Yeah.
make the finding too, please?
Agreed. So I
And
move
amend the
approval.
motion.
I move approval based on the finding that there is sufficient on-street parking in this development.
All right, we have a motion to approve with the finding that there is significant on-street parking for visitors by Commissioner Downs with a second by Commissioner Walters for agenda item number 4. Please cast your vote. Agenda item number 4 carries with a vote of 8-0. Agenda item number 5, administrative items, annual report. I really wanted to say, but you told us that you got to make every single thing when it's a local zoning change.
Good evening, Commission. My name is Steve Sims, Lead Planner for Heritage and Information with the City of Plano. And with me tonight is my colleague, Nick Coleman, Planner, and both of us tonight are going to provide for you the results of a very important project that we work on that basically takes the whole year to do. We never quit. We're always putting together information on it, and this is our Planning Department's annual report. What we're going to do this evening is just share with you some information regarding our city, talk with you about an overview of our department, about who we are, what we do, as well as share with you development information, and also share with you about some of our ongoing projects and school and housing data. One of our first pages that you'll come to when you see our report is pages 5 and 6, and it provides you a snapshot of Plano and information about our city. About Plano, Texas tells you about where we're located, employment information, and also population trends. And then page 6 is the Plano Fast Facts, and that's something you can find on our demographic web page, which will provide for you information regarding housing as well as population in our city. The next thing I would like to do is provide for you the Planning Department overview. And we've got two things here. This is the only slide I'm going to read any information off of verbatim for you. But one is the City of Plano, our pillars of service, provide outstanding services and facilities through cooperative efforts with citizens that contribute to the overall quality of life. And then the second, the Planning Department mission statement, which is the Planning Department is committed to providing outstanding planning, development, heritage preservation, and land record services through cooperative efforts that engage our citizens and contribute to both the long-term and the immediate quality of life of our community. One of the issues that we are really very proud about in our department is focusing on customer service. As all of you know, the year 2020 was a very difficult time for the pandemic. And despite the challenges that we had to face, one of the most important things is that we were able to maintain our customer service average of 5 on a 5 scale as far as customer service quality that we received feedback from. It was a challenging time. We had to do public meetings on Zoom for both Planning and Zoning Commission and Heritage Commission. We also had to have applicant meetings virtually, and we had to work from home, come to the office, do both. So it was a very challenging time, but we were still able to achieve this goal. Next, I would like to share with you the functions of our department. We have our zoning and development, our planning and preservation, where both Nick and I are at, and land records, where Nick came from before he came over to the planning and preservation. And then the tie that binds us all together, our administrative staff. Here is an organization chart of our department. You get to put some names and faces behind what it is that we get to do. And as you can see, we have quite a few people to help out with our department. Next, I'd like to talk with you about our administrative support. We would be lost without these people. They really help keep us on track. They help us prepare for all of our packets, for our documents. They help us to keep up with our mandates in terms of public notifications and notices and getting the information out to let people know regarding our meetings that are going to be coming up. And they help us, particularly with our budget and helping us to keep track of and to pay for our contracts, the services that we have. Next, I would like to share with you about the zoning and development. Now, this is a group of people you are very familiar with. They were just right here with you. Development review is basically about current planning, looking at development plans and what occurs there. And you get to work with them all the time when it comes to zoning cases and site plans, concept plans, and they are working on development and helping the Planning and Zoning Commission come up with recommendations for the City Council and the city as a whole in regards to development. Then we have development services, and their function is very, very important to us. One of the most important things to do is to help to maintain the zoning ordinance, to keep it current both online as well as with hard copies so that we know what our regulations have to state. And they also work with other departments such as neighborhood services and their property standards division in helping to have compliance with our zoning issues. Next is planning and preservation. That's where you'll find us and the heritage and information. And we look back at our city, our history of our city. We are responsible for taking care of that, as well as administering our heritage preservation program with grants, tax exemptions, and also ensuring that heritage properties that they receive, when people have a development plan for them, that it is appropriate. And then we also provide information regarding demographic and development analysis. We have long-range planning. That's a group that you're very familiar with too, especially here recently, in working with the comprehensive plan. They also do special area studies such as expressway corridor studies and the Vision Old Point plan. And they also keep up with and make sure that the community investment program is consistent with our comprehensive plan. And have land records. We have an automated mapping system here at the City of Plano called Geographic Information Systems. And this shows you features on a map. And these features have information tied to them. And this is put together by our land records division. And without that, we would be lost. That information helps us to provide analysis and to make decisions. And they also keep up with all of our records for plats and for plans and for all of our utilities and infrastructure. They used to be quite busy on the telephone and having to answer people coming in all the time, but they were able to implement a program last year that really helped cut down on that and to make their service more efficient. An automated online system where people were able to submit their questions or requests via that way. Then we have our boards and commissions, our standing. And you, of course, with the Planning and Zoning Commission, and you're very, very important to our city in providing recommendations to the City Council and to others regarding development in our city. We also have the Heritage Commission. That's who I get to work with. And what we do is we help oversee the city's heritage programs, again, making sure that any type of development that's done with our heritage properties is appropriate and helps to keep up the integrity and the visual appearance of our heritage areas. Then we have our boards and commissions that are ad hoc. These are put together by council whenever we have a special need, when we have something that has to be taken care of. One that you're really familiar with right now is the Comprehensive Plan Review Committee. They're put together to help develop recommendations, necessary changes for the comprehensive plan. And then we have the 2020 Census Complete Count Committee, and they were a wonderful group of people that helped us educate the public regarding the 2020 census in Plano. And they were able to reach over 91,000 people at 78 different events to encourage them. And their work really paid off because this week we received last week actually, we received the results of the 2020 census. And what we found is that number was very similar to what we heard from the North Central Texas Council of Governments, as well as what we had an in-house estimate. We were all right there, very consistent. And it's again because of this committee that we were able to do that. Another thing we were able to achieve too is 74.4% first-time response rate. The higher we can do that in Plano, the fewer census takers that have to come out and go door to door, helping reduce tax dollars spent on that program. Awards. The Planning and Zoning Commission, the work which you do, as well as our Heritage Commission and the Planning Department, is recognized not only throughout the state of Texas and regionally, but nationally as well. One of the big highlights that we had for 2020 was that our Heritage Commission received the 2020 Commission of the Year Award from the National Alliance of Preservation Commissions at their virtual conference. Now I'm going to get more specific, a little bit more specific here with zoning and development, looking at submittals. As you can see, the number of submittals has been coming down. However, we're still just as busy, if not busier, than ever. And that is because even though the number has decreased, the cases, and you know that as you work with that Planning and Zoning Commission, have become far more complex and require much more time and more staff to work with to help resolve the issues to allow for development to take place. Next, we'd like to show you something that is quite a challenge for us to keep up with. This is our zoning and development map, and we have a big spreadsheet of cases that goes along with this in our report. And what this does is it just tells you the different types of cases that are spread throughout the city and just where they are, whether they've been approved, whether they are pending construction, or also whether they are been withdrawn or denied. And we got one more thing here I was going to tell you about, and that's the zoning department, especially our major projects. As you know, we have some really big projects that are occurring throughout our city. They're very high profile, such as Collin Creek, or Legacy Central, and Legacy West. And what we do is we provide an update on these projects as to what's occurring, how much has been developed, and what still remains. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Nick Coleman, to get more into the numbers. And he's going to tell you about that 2020 census number.
Good evening, Commission. I'm Nick Coleman, planner with the City of Plano Planning Department. As Steve indicated, we'll turn things over to the undeveloped land map. As you can see on the map, there's very little undeveloped land left in the city. As of January 1st, there were 2,264 acres, which is about 4.9% of the total land area in the city. Of that, less than a quarter was zoned for residential uses, approximately 500 acres. From there, we'll head back to heritage preservation. One of the most significant roles for the Heritage Group is a review of certificates of appropriateness, CAs, which are for property owners to submit when they want to modify their historic properties. Could be anything from a new coat of paint to demolishing a structure. Last year, there were 39 CAs handled by the Heritage Group, and while more significant CAs have to be reviewed by the Heritage Commission, more routine maintenance CAs can be reviewed by staff, and last year, almost 2/3 of the CAs were reviewed by staff. And of those staff reviews, almost 85% were reviewed within a single day, which is a great benefit for property owners. In addition to reviewing CAs, the Heritage Group also coordinates the Heritage Preservation Grant Program. And in the last fiscal year, $640,000 worth of preservation grants were awarded to organizations in the city, including the Plano Conservancy, the Heritage Farmstead Museum, the Texas Pool Foundation, and the Plano Masonic Lodge. And in addition to the preservation grants, we had municipal tax exemptions, which were awarded in 2020, totaling over $60,000. In the department as a whole, we had a number of significant projects that we completed in 2020. The neighborhood business design district, the residential community design districts were added to the zoning ordinance. As I'm sure many of you recall, neighborhood business design district 1 was rezoned at the Plano Event Center just earlier this year. Additionally, neighborhood conservation districts were added for historic neighborhoods, and as Steve indicated earlier, the 2020 Census Complete Count Committee completed their work, and the Land Records Group implemented their online customer service form, which in the COVID era cut down significantly on the number of people coming into the office, which is very important. There are also a number of ongoing projects that continue into 2021. First is the DART Silverline Corridor Market Study, looking at the new rail line going through Plano, which will add 2 stops. The CPRC, which their work continues. And finally, the Haggard Park Heritage District Design Standards. which the Heritage and Information Group is reviewing the final draft, and that project should be completed here shortly. We turn now to school district data. Every December, representatives from the planning department meet with representatives of the Plano school districts, and we share with them demographic and census data that we collect and maintain throughout the year, and they share with us information about students in Plano and where they come from within the city. And using this information, we're able to estimate how many students are associated with different types of housing within the city. And we have graphs detailing some of that information here. Finally, not finally, but now we come to the census population figures that Steve indicated earlier. The recently released census information allows us to say that the 2020 population for the city of Plano is 285,494. Additionally, we have the North Central Texas Council of Governments population estimate for January 1st, 2021, which is 286,980. So very close, very accurate. In addition to population, we have some information about the current housing breakdown in the city of Plano. As you can see, it's divided up into single family, multifamily, and other uses, the other primarily being retirement. And then we have a forecast of how housing will break down, we anticipate, within 20 years by 2041. And finally, we have a housing overview. On the left-hand portion of your slide, you'll see an active residential areas map. Each point on the map indicates an area with current residential development. The areas indicated by a number are still active developments. The areas indicated with a letter were completed in 2020. And on the right-hand side of this slide, we have tables showing residential areas that correspond to the map. We show how many permits have been issued for each housing area and how many were originally permitted. So you can get a sense of the pace of development in these residential areas. And that concludes our presentation. Steve and Mike and myself are here to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. Any questions on the annual report? Mr. Samara.
From page 6, the tenure type on housing, 59% owner units, 41% rental units is what you've got here. And sources are, you have quite a few sources listed here. But what was the source of that information?
That information came from the 2019 American Community Survey from the U.S. Census Bureau, the 5-year summary.
The American Community
Survey
actually knows how much multifamily we have here in Plano?
They do a estimate of what they think we have. It's based on a sample size. The American Community Survey is a program that happens annually, every year. And what they do is they send out surveys to 3.5 million households throughout the United States. And they have a 1-year and they have a 5-year. And for Plano, I prefer to have the 5-year because it looks over 5 years of data. And it also lets us look at information at 17.5 million households instead of just 3.5. Our city is small enough in population where a 1 year we can have some pretty wild swings of population. You can have whole groups come and go from the city in 1 year, whereas the 5-year it's more consistent where you can take and you compare data from year to year to year. And so that's what it's looking at.
Okay, well, I was primarily interested in the types of housing that we have in the city and the accuracy of these numbers. In May of 2018, Steve Brown of the Dallas Morning News published a zip code analysis of the entire Metroplex and the amount of multifamily versus single family. And our 6 zip codes here in Plano showed 36% multifamily. And earlier in the year, the CPRC had one of their members bring a consulting company analysis, and off the top of my head, I don't know the name of the consulting company, and it showed a 35.5% multifamily in our city. This is an important number for our planning purposes as to where we're at. So when I see the 31% here, I had questions about the accuracy and whether that's something or not we can bank on here. And additionally, later in your report on page 30, you've got percent of total on future distribution of housing types. And you're showing traditional multifamily at 21% and mixed-use multifamily at 10%. And this is the right-hand column. And mid-rise, 5 stories or higher at 4%. Now, mid-rise, 5 stories or higher would most likely be multifamily, would it not?
Yes, some of it
Okay.
is, some of it is not. It is
Okay.
multifamily in the fact that, I guess what probably better question or answer would be is about ownership. Some of it are condominiums where they are owner occupied, and some of them are not, but they are multifamily, yes.
And then we've got another 4% called other in there.
Yes,
And other is, I'm sorry.
Yeah, most of that
other is listed as independent living, assisted
Yeah.
living, and long-term care facilities.
Yes.
And those are all generally rental properties. So when we provide information to council and to P&Z about how much owner-occupied and how much rental-occupied we have in our cities, it's very important that we get a good handle on that. So additionally, we also have rental housing that seems to be an area of growth nationally, that companies are buying up huge amounts of single-family homes across the nation. Do we have any idea how much of our single-family homes are rental properties and an accurate number on multifamily, both senior living, assisted living, and traditional multifamily?
Steve, if I may, there's distinction between the American Community Survey data and the city's data is very much about that senior living. So when you see these numbers here, the amount of multifamily numbers that come from the census includes the senior housing. Traditionally in the past, we've grouped them as other and not as multifamily, and so that's the difference in the numbers between ours and the census data. In regards to the rental percentage, anytime we quote a rental percentage, we always refer to the ACS data because, like you mentioned, it includes a single family, which we don't have a good number for that. To your third point, we do have a very good handle on the number of multifamily complexes, but again, that can be a condominium type product. So it doesn't always translate apples to apples from units to percentage rental versus owner.
Oh, well, thank you.
Any further questions? Commissioner Carey?
Yeah, I just have a quick one up. Congratulations on your 5.0 citizen response. That's a great rating. And my question is just, being a retailer, that kind of response is always really interesting to me, is what different vehicles do you have for citizens to respond? There, I think you had 45 responses, and I'm just curious how they actually are able to respond.
What we do is when we have them send an email to us, or if we have an email, they can take and they can provide for us. They can take a survey and take and fill it out and tell us what they think about it.
Every staff member's email address has got a line to take a customer satisfaction survey. I think that's in large part where our numbers come from.
Okay, great. Hey, thank you very much.
Commissioner Downs?
I noted 2 or 3 vacancies in leadership positions. Are those actively being filled or?
Yes, one of the leadership positions, the supervisor that works for Mr. Hill, that position we currently have a job offer that has gone out, and so we anticipate that we know who will fill that position. The manager position, we did some reclassification of that position, so it's taking a little longer to fill that, but that position reports directly to me, and I'm actively working at reviewing resumes.
Thank you.
Any further questions?
Real quick. Steve, this is a fantastic report. And if you said it takes all year, it shows it. And I like to say thanks for all your work on the Census Complete Outreach Committee. Couldn't have been a better committee. And you guys did great, but please understand that COVID interrupted the progress we were making because we had to shut down before we were able to generate the April report, as they said. But fantastic job on this. This is great.
Thank you.
There's no better planning department in the state of Texas. And it's an honor to work with you guys in doing what we do, because if it wasn't for the job that y'all do and your professionalism, it would make this job a lot harder than it is. So thank y'all so much.
Thank you.
With that said, we have a couple people that are leaving us after tonight's meeting. Meredith and Craig, if you guys will come forward. This is the last time that we get to see these guys present to us. So I wanted to thank you guys for your service to the city and to this commission, helping this commission out throughout the years. Meredith, you're moving out of state, is that correct? And Craig, you're going home to Princeton to be the planning director, is that right?
Planning manager.
Planning manager for the city of Princeton. You get to go home, so that's very cool. Very awesome. We wish you guys the best, and thank you so much for everything you've done for us throughout your time with the city and with the planning department. Thank you.
Thank you.
So Christian's got 2 more vacancies to fill than the ones you asked about. So anyway, I didn't want to point that out when the chart was up there. But
Thanks a lot.
Any further business of the commission tonight? All right. Well, it's 7:52. We are hereby adjourned.
Community for all, and we want to make sure everyone feels engaged and supported in the city of Plano.